Hopefully I convince you guys that something is happening to online reviews across a lot of contexts now that independent teams are coming to these similar conclusions. Great. Well, thank you guys for having me. It is an honor to be here. Good morning to everyone from the West Coast, and good afternoon to everyone else who just flew in from the East. My name is Samsun Knight. I'm from University of Toronto. This is joint work with Yakov Bart, who's here with us today, and Minwen Yang, who's a brilliant PhD student at the University of Toronto. She'll be on the job market in 2 years, so for those of us in academia, please look out for her. She is fantastic. So I'm going to frame this fairly quickly, I think, because the framing has been done very well by the previous talk. But I'm going to focus a little bit more on kind of the broader social aspect, as well as the business importance of online reviews, where online reviews are kind of a core part of how the internet is useful to us. Having reliable information online is one of the fundamental public goods that the internet offers to us in our kind of modern day experience. We get a wide variety of information that would be very costly to get ourselves. There's fantastic work by Imke Reimers and Joel Waldfogel quantifying how much better off consumers are by knowing about products through this kind of crowdsourced information. Now, in the last 2 years, we have this new production process for online reviews that is fundamentally changing. It may be too far to call it a paradigm shift, but it is at least sort of an explosive new tool to adjust how online reviews are made. And it remains an open question about whether this will actually improve the information content and this social good and this kind of key infrastructure that businesses rely upon, or threaten that social surplus. So here is the kind of obligatory AI-generated photo that I think all of these presentations, I hope, have at least one. You can see, I think, sort of like the ups and downs where like this has a it's like very like competent, it was made instantly, has like a couple tells that makes it very obvious, but generally is like a pretty high quality thing you can get away with pretty quickly. There's been, I think we've been hearing from some really esteemed folks already at this conference that there's like a real optimist case that especially for people who have trouble with grammar or fluency issues, online reviews may be vastly improved by using ChatGPT to make these reviews more legible. However, as I'm sure we've encountered in like various contexts on social media, there is a widely spread pessimist case that people are worried that there'll just be like less thought going into these reviews. There's a great framing that I love called by Don DeLillo, where he talks about how writing is thinking, and that when you write, you do think more deeply, and maybe you're going to be extracting less meaningful information if writing is being done for you. But even beyond that, if information is the same but is just trusted less, it could lead to lower utility from online reviews just because of a crisis of perceived reliability. So in this presentation, we're going to try and examine this empirically. We're going to look at two kind of major online review contexts. We're going to be looking at Yelp.com and Amazon.com. And then we're also going to be looking at some lab evidence to try and suss out which of these realities we are currently in. The field data come from the camera, photo, and video category and San Francisco restaurants on Yelp. We focus on these subcategories because of the time cost of data collection. We made it tractable by focusing on areas where we believe that tech adoption was likely to be ahead of its time. And then separately, we're going to complement our evidence with two pre-registered lab studies, basically trying to recreate these effects in the lab to kind of show that this effect holds and is unlikely to be driven by confounds that are outside of the scope of our data to control for, and also to tease out a little bit about what the mechanism might be. There's a fantastic emerging body of work of which we just heard one paper on this topic. Sort of more broadly, this belongs to the categories of there's generative AI, kind of writ large, the effects in the economy. This is a little bit of a tell of the results that we're going to get, but there's emerging literature about algorithm aversion or kind of anti-AI bias is what I'm going to kind of characterize it as. And then separately, fantastic literature kind of in the information science and marketing space around just kind of the determinants of quality and credibility in online reviews. that we hope this can contribute to for a kind of novel review mechanism. We're going to have around 80,000 reviews for Yelp.com, 120,000 for Amazon, and we're going to be looking mostly in our field data at just sort of user ratings of how good the review is, so kind of perceptions of quality for these online reviewers. We are going to be relying by necessity on a kind of AI tool that works to detect the use of AI in review writing. We're going to be looking at kind of like a like pre and post GPT release sample. And so we're going to hope to address issues of potential false positives by running our analysis before ChatGPT is released to characterize any association between false positives and our outcome variables. And then we're going to look at how that changes after ChatGPT gets released to look at the causal effect of ChatGPT on these outcomes. Separately, we also, in our lab study, one of our primary motivations is that we validate this tool and we show that even if it doesn't track exactly, or even if we're not able to speak to how precisely it tracks with actual AI usage, it at least tracks with how people perceive AI. If the AI tool thinks it's AI, probably humans do too. And so we find throughout our sample kind of a big spike in GPT usage right after GPT is released. There's still, though, this like crucial density of false positives, which is why we have to be so careful in our empirical specifications. We don't find kind of an observable descriptive characteristics that much salient difference between the observed characteristics of reviews. It doesn't seem like ChatGPT reviews are being used just to flood sort of like 5-star ratings, at least in our samples, and for like the time period that we observe. This is also true for like other observable characteristics that you can look into the working paper for more details on if you're curious. But broadly speaking, we're thinking of these as sort of, I have like an early adopter family friend who's described to me when I was writing this paper about how he just likes to use ChatGPT because now the review that took him 5 minutes to write takes him 30 seconds. He can just write up a couple bullet points, bam, there's a review, and he just feels excited to be sort of involved in the technological change. So we're going to be, as I mentioned, building our empirical specification carefully to account for false positives by estimating effects in kind of a placebo period, kind of before ChatGPT gets released, and then investigating what happens after ChatGPT enters widespread use. We're going to be doing all of our specifications both with and without controls, partly without controls because some of the causal pathway may go through effects on word count, for example. But anyway, without further ado, we find a strong negative association with detected ChatGPT use right after, in the period after ChatGPT is released, between detected use and review quality. In kind of Amazon.com reviews, we find, if anything, that this is likely to be a conservative estimate because it seems that the false positives that we detect are actually positively associated with review helpfulness, right? If somebody was writing a review before ChatGPT was released that looked like ChatGPT, it was probably a really good review. It probably had great grammar. It was probably long. It was probably like discursive. And then right after it gets released, all of a sudden it flips. We find these reviews are no longer being associated with positive impressions of quality and instead are around 0.15 standard deviations worse off. To try our best to control for possible confounds, because this, in particular, this could be driven by differential selection into ChatGPT use, right? Maybe terrible reviewers are the ones who are choosing to use ChatGPT, and their lower skill is being reflected in this association. We're going to do our best to control for that by doing a 2-period difference in differences. For all the academics in the room, 2-period difference in differences is not vulnerable to heterogeneity and cohort effects, so I will not be showing you 6 different DID graphs. I feel very comforted by this, but it's mostly so that we can capture as many authors in both periods as we can, but also it just simplifies a lot of concerns. We don't get enough sample of matched reviewers across either period to find enough statistical precision to make real claims for our Amazon sample. But for Yelp.com, we find a really strong effect even when looking just within the same reviewer pre and post ChatGPT release, depending on whether that reviewer adopted ChatGPT into their production process. We think this is a strong evidence that ChatGPT use is associated with lower online review quality. But we're going to try and break down one last step in our observable evidence by looking at some heterogeneity based on whether kind of one of the primary attributes we can observe, really, of whether this is kind of an expert reviewer who's part of like either the Vine Voice program or the Yelp Elite program. These are kind of vetted and exclusive programs that are kind of reviewers who are regularly evaluated for review quality. And this allows us to speak a little bit to the literature around, like, well, is this affecting different types of workers differently? And also allows us to potentially see, like, maybe if there's a perception-based effect, it's moderated by whether you seem like an expert or whether you seem like your review is being validated. And since I was building up to it, I'm sure you could sense that there was something here. We find that the effect is entirely driven by non-badged reviews. It seems that casual reviewers who do not have this elite badge are making up the entirety of the effect that we observe for Yelp.com. Again, for Amazon, we present it for thoroughness and to show that we're not cherry picking. We don't have enough precision to make strong claims. The point estimates are larger for the casual reviewers, but there's not really strong statistical evidence either way in that context. So to actually kind of break this down in terms of, and to hopefully convince you further that this effect is real and salient, we're going to now present two lab studies that try and recreate this pattern and really break down where it might be coming from. So to start with, we just tried to say, like, is this really about like the content of the review? Are these reviews actually worse? Or is this just because people think that ChatGPT is associated with them and they just have this kind of like anti-AI bias? So what we do is we take 25 human-written reviews. We have ChatGPT rewrite them in its own voice. So we have sort of 25 human reviews, 25 AI reviews, and then we either present them to online participants telling them that it was written by humans or telling them it was written by ChatGPT. And like across the board, you can show people identical review text, and they will rate it lower if they are told that ChatGPT was involved. They rate it lower quality. Obviously, I think it's not as surprising to say that it's probably less authentic, but they also view it as less persuasive, less helpful, and less useful. The information content is being rated as less informative, kind of across a wide set of dimensions, as soon as they are perceiving these reviews to involve generative AI usage. It seems that and we interpret this to say that, like, while we can't rule out that there may also be actual content effects, this is a very plausible mechanism that perceptions of lower quality associated with AI usage could be driving our effect in the field. And then to kind of close the loop, we run a second lab study, basically just randomly sampling from our data and asking participants to rate them again across these same set of quality dimensions and to rate how much they believe these reviews involved generative AI usage in their production. This allows us both to validate our kind of like detection instrument and to see if we can kind of reproduce our results in the field. So first of all, we do find that there's a significant positive correlation between human perceptions of AI usage and what we detect as AI usage, but these magnitudes are fairly small. Humans are imprecise. They're not great at figuring out which ones are actually ChatGPT generated or not. But if we expect in our field context that this would attenuate the effects that we observe. So this means that our effects are likely a lower bound on the true effect if there is like an anti-AI bias, but it's being applied imprecisely, then our findings may just be sort of a conservative estimate. And similarly, when we actually compare the quality evaluations across AI-detected reviews and those that are not detected to involve AI usage, we find significant negative effects on authenticity and sincerity, marginally significant effects on kind of the usefulness ratings. But we find very strong evidence that this is primarily being attenuated by imprecision in perceptions of AI. Once you look at reviews that are both detected to involve AI and are perceived as such, you see a really strong negative quality penalty. This suggests to us that, again, we can't do this exercise in the field data, but this suggests to us that this attenuation bias is real, and our field results are, if anything, a lower bound on the true quality penalty being assessed against AI-generated reviews today. So just to kind of zoom out, we've basically presented with you guys a kind of rapid fire of field evidence and lab evidence showing that there is a strong anti-AI bias among consumers today around the quality of information content. The main takeaway, I hope, is that, and there's two main takeaways. The information of the internet doesn't have to get less useful for it to be less used. And if it becomes less relied upon, that decreases the utility we receive from it, even absent any actual change in the content itself. That said, we do have one optimistic finding that as long as you have some type of validation program, this negative effect seems to be attenuated to zero. We kind of modestly propose that those interested in preserving the public goods of the internet and sort of preserving consumer trust in their products may want to implement basically new internet infrastructure to protect against these negative associations and to assure consumers that humans are involved in review production. I went a little bit over, but I think now I'm ready to start the Q&A. Thank you. I'll start at the front row, Mikhail.
Hi, I'm the neighbor for University of Manchester.
Oh, welcome.
Very interesting. I wonder if you could attribute partially to visibility the effect, partially the mechanism. Maybe
yes.
Reading reviews, they just play with ChatGPT for something else. They don't read it as much as they used to before, so helpfulness will drop just because of the visibility.
That's a primary motivation for reproducing the effect in our lab evidence. That's the type of confound that we can't observe or control for.
Yeah, but in the lab you mentioned it's not so strong on the helpfulness, right?
That's true. That's true.
Yeah. So that's why I'm asking. Partially in the field, could how to control for this? That's my more general question. Is there any way to even control for visibility concern? Maybe in the lab put more emphasis on this part.
Oh, okay. So like a follow-up lab study that tries to integrate visibility differences. I like that. That's a great idea. Thank you for that suggestion.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
How did you train and test the model? Like, how do you ask it to detect if this person
Yes, so we outsourced it. So we basically are using a sort of what we understand to be a cutting-edge model in GPT detection. These models are not, they have issues, and we kind of like document those issues, we reproduce them, but we then try to validate it in our with our online surveys. But that is sort of a principal limitation that we have to rely upon some form of GPT detection, and we use an outside service. We understand that they trained it against, I believe, sort of like in-house labeled data, but I don't have too much visibility into their actual process. Yeah.
Mike there.
Yeah.
Oh,
here.
Oh, yeah.
I have a question on the underlying linguistic features. Could you elaborate a little bit more? So I would intuitively expect that there are differences that maybe as a human, I would say, this is what I, for example, like, so on and so forth. So there's more first person pronouns, for instance.
Yes.
Or people write in a more dense form, like you have bullet points, for instance. So the linguistic structure is probably different. Could you elaborate a little bit more on that?
That's a great point, absolutely. ChatGPT does, the reason it's detectable is because it has a distinct writing style. That distinct writing style is associated with differences in language use. And we would absolutely, I think that's, I'm grateful to the prior study for engaging with that more deeply than our current working paper does. But right now, when I talked about similarity in style, we were just talking about pretty high level metrics of just sort of like star rating, review positivity, like valence, and word count. In particular, like the only difference in word count distribution is you see very few ChatGPT reviews that are very, very short. They don't do the sort of like no good, but that's something that we should investigate. We haven't done that analysis yet, but that's a great question, and we'll follow up and add that to the paper.
So as part of this study, have you also considered doing and analyzing the response to the reviews? Are they being responded by the ChatGPT, and what would it look like? Because a lot of small businesses, they have started responding to reviews using ChatGPT.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, we have not, but that's a fantastic follow-up. We'd have to, do you mean sort of like the business like actually like commenting on the review?
Right.
I wonder if that's in our data. That may be in our raw data.
Yelp has a lot of it.
Yeah. That's a great question. Yeah, not yet, but we hope to. Yeah. I think I'm out of time, but I'll be around, and I would love to talk more with all of you about this. Thank you guys for your time.